A former cabinet minister will learn next week whether MPs will suspend him from Parliament for 30 days for breaching Commons rules on lobbying. Conservative MP Owen Paterson was found to have repeatedly lobbied ministers and officials on behalf of two companies for which he was acting as a paid consultant. The names of the firms were Randox and Lynn's Country Foods. The Common Standards Committee said Mr Paterson's actions were an egregious breach of the rules on paid advocacy by MPs and recommended he should be suspended for 30 sitting days. But Mr Paterson responded by releasing an angry statement in which he rejected the Commissioner's findings and labelled the process biased and not fair. Well, I'm joined this morning in what is his first broadcast interview since these findings came out earlier in the week by Owen Paterson himself. Good morning, Owen.
Good morning, Nigel.
Let's just, from the top with all of this, you're a member of Parliament, you are allowed to have outside work, you're earning about £100,000 a year from these two consultancies. You're found by the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner to have effectively not just have been an advisor to these companies, but a lobbyist for these companies. Isn't that of itself a breach of parliamentary standards?
Yes, if it was true, but it's not true. I was not lobbying. I was using the exception rule that you can bring a serious wrong to the attention of ministers or government agencies, even if it benefits a person or company you're associated with, if there is a genuine serious wrong. I've never raised these three companies in a question, in a debate, in Westminster Hall, in a statement. I've never been involved in any contracts they've negotiated with any government agency, because that would be improper. I judged that on these three issues, they were so serious and lives were at risk, and I was privy to some exceptional information because of the exceptional technology involved. It would have been absolute dereliction of duty if I had not raised those issues with the FSA. So if you take the first two, Randox have exceptional technology. They found out that 12.5% of random milk samples, taken totally at random from British supermarkets, had antibiotics, including fluorphenicol, which is absolutely banned. Not a few parts per billion, 0. It is known to be carcinogenic. And we know that carcinogenic substances and also antimicrobial resistance are issues which the World Health Organization could say will be the biggest killers of human life in decades to come. The chief medical officer at the time said antimicrobial resistance issues were catastrophic. It would have been absolutely wrong, given my own personal background from a farming background, my own background here as a member of Parliament for North Shropshire, one of the biggest milk lakes in Western New York. A time as a shadow minister, when I travelled the world learning about the dairy industry, and then my 2 years as the deferent Secretary of State, it would have been quite wrong not to have used that knowledge to bring it to the attention of the FSA and to accelerate the story. As a result, that item is now being tested for, and British milk is safer. So this morning, when you put milk into your coffee or into your cornflakes, you were safer thanks to my efforts. Similarly, on the issue of a carcinogenic product being deliberately targeted at young British children, which Professor Chris Elliott, Britain's leading food expert, said was the worst case of marketing he'd seen in 35 years, that also was resolved. It was brought to the attention of the Irish authorities. They acted very rapidly, and the company involved changed the formulation. So I'm actually very proud of what I've achieved. I find it quite extraordinary that this report has totally failed. It has not interviewed me properly. I produced 17 witnesses who've all corroborated my version of events. And this is a complete denial of natural justice. This inquiry started 2 years ago yesterday. If we said it was yesterday, the first time I talked to the Commissioner for Standards would be the 26th of March, 2023. That's how long ahead it would be if she'd started on this basis yesterday.
And how much time did you spend with Catherine Stone she was in charge of this inquiry. Did you sit down and make the points to her that you've just made to us about safety?
Connection. Hello?
Hello. Owen, my question was, did you sit down with Catherine Stone face to face and make the points that you've made, that yes, you were a consultant for these companies, but you were, I think we've lost him, which is a terrible bore. Well, I'm sorry about that. We will endeavour to get Owen Paterson back. But either way, you know, what has been laid down?
Can you hear me? I'm back again.
Are you back?
Sorry, I had a phone call.
Fine, right. Take two.
So just very briefly, so this inquiry started 30th of October 2019.
Yep.
You go right round the clock. The first memorandum was produced 6 months after my wife took her own life in December 2020. I'd still not been talked to at that time. On the 2nd of September this year, the Commissioner wrote to the clerk saying she'd already made her mind up before that first memorandum was published. That first memorandum was riddled with factual inaccuracies, some of them quite comical, such as the suggestion I should have met the chief vet. I didn't just meet the chief vet. We had meetings in my office with a whole range of experts across the dairy industry, and we moved on from fluorphenicol to flucicides. And the experts have said, thanks to the result of those meetings, which we grandly call the Milk Quality Forum, British milk is safer. So I'm actually very proud of what we've achieved, and I wouldn't hesitate to do it again tomorrow. The tragedy for me and for my family is that none of this has been properly explored by a proper process. If you look at the ACAS rules, from those basic inspection of an issue in any small business, you immediately have a meeting with the person. Why didn't the Commissioner ring me the afternoon she read the article in the newspaper and said, I don't like the look of this, Mr. Paterson, what is your response? ACAS then goes on to say you have to establish what the terms are, what the criticism is, and both sides can exchange information. It's the most basic fundamental issue would be exposed at the beginning. So natural justice does not apply to members of Parliament.
Did you sit down with Catherine Stone face to face and make the points that you made here this morning?
I did not. I've never met Catherine Stone. Because of COVID, she wouldn't meet me. We didn't meet until the 26th of March this year. So that's 17 months from the time this inquiry was launched. And I did put questions to her. Well, the first question I put was, I've spent 25 years in business. I became president of my European Trade Association. I've been in Parliament for 24 years. I've never had an argument with the Fees Office. I've never had an argument with IPSA. I went right through the expenses scandal. Unlike senior members of the Standards Committee, I've never had an issue with any of the speakers. And yet I'm treated as a criminal from the beginning. And this is something I find very, very hard to handle, that I'm not treated with the respect of someone who has not broken any rules. It is a very, very difficult experience for me to be condemned from the beginning. And we know now, the Commissioner said she'd made up her mind before she wrote even the first memorandum, and her opinion hasn't changed. And the committee are equally at fault because I offered them in the meeting in September. I had one meeting with the committee and I said, here's the mobile phone. Let's ring these guys up on WhatsApp. There are two obvious witnesses that straddle two of the subjects. Let's ring them up. You ring them. Go on, ring them. And they've not rung a single witness. They've had the details of my witnesses since that call to the Commissioner on the 26th of March. Not one of those witnesses has even had a text. Now, that could not happen in a court of law. My lawyers are emphatic that if we'd suspended parliamentary privilege, we'd gone to a court, a judge would have chucked this out for improper procedure very rapidly. So what is so sickening is there is a procedure. Under standing orders, there should have been an investigatory panel, which there would have been a proper lawyer, a properly trained lawyer, who could have interrogated witnesses.
Owen,
so it's not only
this Wednesday. This Wednesday, there's going to be a vote in the House of Commons on whether you're going to get a 30-day suspension from Parliament, which is a very, very, very serious sanction. Will you be able to speak in your defence in the House of Commons on Wednesday?
Well, I very much hope so, and I intend to speak. Yeah. And I'm absolutely emphatic. By my actions, British food is safer and lives have been saved. And it would have been an appalling dereliction of my duty, my experience, and my knowledge not to have raised those issues. And as I've said, I would raise them again this morning. I wouldn't hesitate. And what is the point of being an MP if you have that knowledge and you have the privilege? It's a great privilege being MP to be able to bring this to the attention of the right authorities very rapidly. We were really concerned about the milk issue, and we really thought this could make the whole salmonella crisis in the chicken industry look like a jelly pudding. It could have really blown it up, but much worse, lives were at risk. There is a moral angle to this. It would have been immoral not to have raised these issues, and none of this has been explored by either the Commissioner or the committee.
You say that it's a great privilege to be an MP, but clearly the MP salary isn't enough for you.
Yes, but I think it's wrong not to allow people to have outside interests. I am handsomely remunerated, you're quite right, as an MP, and by the companies that pay me, but I'm very, very careful to keep the divide. So I stressed earlier, these companies are in daily contact with agencies of the British government. I have nothing to do with that, whatever, absolutely nothing. That would be quite improper. But these issues have been portrayed as selling expeditions, and emphatically they weren't. And the 17 witnesses all confirm my view. So I think it is good that MPs have outside interests. I wouldn't have had knowledge about this technology. I wouldn't have access to this very special information if I hadn't had an outside interest. So I think it is good that MPs do bring knowledge and ideas and new technologies to the attention of Parliament and the public services and bureaucracies. It's very important. These bureaucracies are very stick in the mud. One of the most interesting documents was from the FSA, who, in a private briefing, recommended that we should carry on with the status quo. Now, luckily, the status quo has some very good leaders in Heather Hancock and Tim Bennett. They recognised the seriousness of the situation and took action. But that was shocking. Maintain the status quo, 12.5% of milk with carcinogenic products in from the authority. Now, that is the purpose.
I absolutely hear what you're saying.
Having those contacts. But they have
I hear
to
what
be
you
monitored.
say, but as you know,
there has to be a policing system, but it has to be within the rules of natural justice. And the current
after
system
Cash for Questions
doesn't go near that. Sorry.
After Cash for Questions, after the MP's expenses scandal, you and I both know that the public do not really like MPs having outside earnings at all, and that is a debate I think that's going to go on for some years, because do we pay MPs more? Well, if you ask the public that, they say no. So, I understand the argument you make that having outside interests gives you specialist expertise that you can speak on and try and improve things. And I get that. I understand that. Do you right here and now think you can win this vote on Wednesday?
Definitely, because I think MPs do have a sense of fairness. And anyone can recognise that if someone is not interviewed, not even met for 17 months after an inquiry is launched, during which time their wife takes their own life because, not entirely, we'll never know entirely why, but the pressures and the manner in which this inquiry was conducted definitely drove Rose to despair, because she could see no end solution until I was found out for something, just something, and then I'd be made to resign, and she'd have to resign.
So you
but I think MPs do have a sense of fairness. And what we must do on Wednesday is also talk about the future. This system is absolutely broken, and my case is the most shocking example. So I feel I'm speaking for current MPs to whom this could happen, and future MPs. My daughter's written a piece in the Sunday Telegraph saying quite clearly she wouldn't go near politics, having been through this very close experience with me. So I feel very strongly no other
if you're involved in politics,
ever be put through this again.
I know as well as you do, being involved in politics affects everybody around you. There is, no way out of that, and I think it does put people off getting involved. But are you really saying you genuinely believe that this case hanging over you was a direct contributor to the death of your wife, Rose?
Yes, I've said this on many occasions, the manner in which the inquiry is conducted. So I responded to all the questions in very great detail, and I paid tribute to my office staff who've gone through a terrible time as well. Don't forget, they've been very badly affected by this. We went into that in huge detail on the 16th of January this year, and we thought we'd answered it. But the inquiry came back, the Commissioner came back with yet more questions, quite a long way away from the original newspaper allegation, and then back again in May with yet more questions, miles away from the original allegations. And that's what drove major element. We'll never know. You have to be very careful talking about this. We'll never know what triggered her decision to end her life. But it is absolutely clear, I'm quite clear, that last weekend she had a real go at me in the kitchen, saying, when is this going to end? You do realise they're going to find out something. However this goes on, they're somehow going to find something. They're determined to get you on something. And then you'll be forced to resign, and I'll have to resign, and we'll end our lives in humiliation and misery. So the human cost for our family is absolutely catastrophic. Bluntly, the last quarter of my life has been destroyed. And it's all because there's no proper process. This could all have been sorted out in a phone call way back on October the 30th, 2019, or if there'd been a proper exchange of witnesses, it could have been sorted out very quickly after Parliament reconvened. But this has dragged on in a manner which is absolutely shameful. And the whole process brings, I think, the deepest shame on Parliament. So we have a chance on Wednesday, not just to vote on my issue and my report, but we absolutely have to bring in measures to bring in a fair system which respect the rules of natural justice. There has to be an exchange of information between both sides. There have to be proper trained lawyers involved, and witnesses have to be professionally interrogated. None of that has happened in my case. So I'm quite clear, I must be the last case. This must never, ever happen to another human being again. What has happened to me is wicked and shameful.
Owen?